Cool, guys. Well, thanks for making the time. Really appreciate you all being here. And I got a question earlier today about potentially doing other zero to heroes in other technologies. Of course, I wouldn't be the one hosting some of those, but I think it's a great idea. Maybe some of you can take the lead some days and just, you know, run the show. Maybe for Power Automate, Power Apps. It would be great to have you teach us how to do things. All right, let me share my screen and quit talking. Awesome. Let me know if you see my screen.
Yes.
And if for some reason, if it's going slow,
Yes.
also let me know. I can try to kill some of the videos here and we'll go from there. Already.
Hey Victor, sorry to interrupt. I think there are a
Yep.
couple of my colleagues who are waiting in the lobby. They've just pinged me.
I think they're all in now.
All right, cheers,
I
thanks.
I was going to configure people to bypass the lobby, but we had some instances where folks try to hijack the meeting, posting like inappropriate videos and audios. So we'll live with the we'll live
Wow.
with that for now. All right.
Okay.
So for today, we got a couple of lessons that we're gonna look at. My machine is going very slow here, folks. So I think I'll kill my video for a little bit. All right, let's see if we get better. All right, so we had two lessons to look at. One is Portal's features. Once again, we'll quickly go through it, and then the next lesson is Portal's architecture. So we'll cruise through the first one and spend more time on the second one, as I believe it'll be more beneficial to spend time in architecture, just looking at portals under the hood, um, as opposed to spending time on something else. All right, so let's dive right into it. And if there is anybody here that has rights to admit people, feel free. If you hear the beep, and you have the power to do it, you're free to admit folks. All right, so portal features. We talked about it last time. A bunch of features that comes out of the box on portals. One of them that's really basic is content management. I mean, you can create pages, you can do all sorts of stuff in portals right from the get-go. So that's a really basic feature. The other features that we have in place, they are related um, to CDS or data verge itself, creating forms in data verge and then exposing those forms in the portals, creating views in data verge, and then exposing it in portals. So essentially exposing your data verge data or CDS data through portals. So that's, to me, that's by far the most powerful feature. And then you have the other ones that are prepackaged in the templates. So you have the customer service template that has case management right from the get-go. You have also in that particular template, you have knowledge base article sharing to your end customers. So all those features are pre-baked in the template. There's one other template that I've seen folks use as well, which is the partner management features. And what it is you're essentially bringing your partners into your data verge database, but not necessarily paying a full license of dynamic sales to have that type of functionality. So partners can register accounts, contacts, they can manage their own records, and you can extend that particular module to even pay your partners based on their participation. So those features are available out of the box if you install a portal template. And we talked about it last time that templates are available only if you have some of the modules installed in your instances. Any questions so far? I guess not. Do you have a question, Sunil?
No,
I
I'm good.
guess. Go ahead if you do. Or maybe not. All right.
No,
So
sorry.
somebody raised their hand. Let's see who it is.
Yeah,
Go
so
for it.
I have a question. So, if we do not have the Dynamics 365 license, we cannot install that apps, right?
You cannot. There is one. There's documentation out there, and I think I'll send it to you where you can do a trial instance, and with that you would be able to install the apps and the templates.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. The other thing that I discovered, especially on this trial game, I used to do a lot of trials. I still do some trials for pre-sales. And now the way Microsoft is doing trials is essentially it's all uh, guided through your own tenant in Microsoft, right? A Microsoft tenant. The problem with that for me is that I cannot install trial subscriptions. For example, if you do a trial license on your own tenant and
Mhm.
you decide that you want to add Office 365 trials, then now you have all that junk in your real tenant, right?
Okay.
The trials interface used to allow you to create a whole tenant out of the box. So where you would create that .onmicrosoft.com address. Is
Mm-hmm.
everybody following me? Maybe,
Yeah.
maybe not. But the I like that scenario where you create the whole package and then you can throw trial licenses for Office 365, Sales Insights. You can try even, have Azure credits on a full tenant without touching your real tenant.
Mm-hmm.
I discovered a hidden link that I think I'll put it on the communications for next time. So the idea is you're trying to set up a portal and you want to install the sales module, but in your tenant, you don't have the funds to do so. So you can still use this link to do a trial that will give you a full tenant to mess with, to play with. All right.
Okay.
So I'll post that link out there. And
Okay.
that would work for everybody that's trying to create a community environment, but they don't have a work email. They only have a Hotmail account. So this would work for you at least for 30 days. Okay. So I'll throw that into the next email. Um,
Thank you.
all right. So outside of those template features, there are two uh, packages will alternate portal applications, and you probably saw it on the lesson if you did the lesson. One is, excuse me, event management portal, and this ships with the Dynamics 365 marketing product. Now, this is not your common Power Apps portal by any means. The binaries are completely different. I think this uses Angular in the back end. So none of the skills that we are going to learn in this training really applies to uh, events management, not completely. Okay, so and then you have also the Dynamics 365 supply chain management, and this is built on top of the FNO deployment, and it leverages the dual write capability. So whatever you save in FNO would automatically save on counterpart data verge entities. There is a guy, a friend of mine in France, Aurelien. I forgot his last name now. Hopefully he'll never uh, see this
It's
recording.
Claire. It's Aurelian Claire.
Yes, yeah, he's a good friend. He has posts on how to set this up. So if you are in the F&O world, Mary, I know you are queen there in F&O, and I'll do a little bit of marketing for Mary Thompson. If you have questions, F&O, or even Power Platform altogether, yeah, she's got great material there. Um, but yeah, this is an option as well. You can have your customer uh, manage orders through a portal, and the data would flow from their Verge straight into the F&O solution. Okay, and if you have more questions here, I can point you out to some resources out there. All right. So, come on. I wanna get back to where I was, and it looks like I am lost. Oh, right here. So, and then at the end here of this lesson is just checking your knowledge, and essentially this section here is just teaching you what's available and which direction you should go depending on business requirements. So it's important to know what's available out there. I mean, I mentioned this in the last training. I'm a dev. From as far as I can remember, but I never start stuff from scratch. Microsoft has enough resources to do the work for us, or a lot of the work for us. So I always look for what's available out there before I spend time doing customization. So important to know what's out there. Now, the next lesson is portals architecture. So that's where we're going to spend more time today. Provisioning strategy, we already looked at it last time. So I don't think there is a need to do it there. Let's have a look at maker and admin tools. So the maker is really a take on managing portals customization using an experience or user experience that's similar to what you'd see for Canvas apps, and even uh, somewhat Power Automate. It's just the point click idea for you to click on and then see what can be done using just Citizen Developer features. We will get into it more. I think in the next time we meet, all of the areas and sections and what can be done this way. And not only we're going to look at Portal Studio, but also we're going to look at the other legacy ways of playing with portals through the backend. All right. So that's what they're talking about. How do you get there? There's the portal management app, and we'll look into that in a second. Portal front side editing tools, and then the admin center. All right. So let's go to the maker. Oh, come on. You're serious? If I can remember my password. Darn it. Let me see. Sorry, folks. Oh, is this really happening? And cool. All right, because we provision portals, well, when you provision portals, you have access to a couple of applications here in your apps list. One is the portal itself, which I've named Ideas Demo, and then this one is the portal management. If I click on Edit on this option here, then I land on Portal Studio. I'm gonna grab a copy of Maker, put it on another tab, just because when I click here, Edit, it's gonna take the navigation away and not give me a way to come back. So that's there. So first page you land is your home page. In here, you can create menus if you want. So the exercise we're gonna do quickly just to prove that this works is to create a page. So I'm gonna create a blank page. And if this ever comes back, all right, give it a name, lesson 2. Oops. Then when I click out, it also auto saves. Again, always make sure that you see this message before you assume that it's really saved. I can go to the components area, throw a text box. Come on. Put some text. My sample text. Click out of there, and then it saves automatically. Okay. So what in essence I created is I created a record in an entity called web page. All right. And again, we'll dive into that here. But before we jump into portal management, the backend, I wanted to share a slide that I share on almost all my presentations. And this is called the under the hood portals. It's very important for all of us to understand the data structure behind portals so that it facilitates how we manage and we customize. So the core record for a portal website is an entity called website. And then associated with websites, you have web pages, site settings, content snippets, web files. There are lots of other entities, but I believe this top 4 are the most important, at least for this stage. Okay. Web page is where portals will store content of the page along with information about entity forms and so on and so forth, permissions as well. Site settings is where you configure portals, different settings. You can configure authentication providers through site settings. You can configure the number of records that you want to come back on a grid through site settings. You can configure whether or not you want to allow local authentication to portals through site settings, so on and so forth. Content snippets are areas of the portal that you want to add a snippet so that a editor user can later on make changes to. So the users wouldn't necessarily get into like the HTML content of a page. They can just click on a certain area of portals and they would be able to make changes to those snippets. Snippets are language based. So if your portal is multi-language, you can enable users to provide snippets for all languages that you have enabled for portals. Then finally here you have web files. By default, these files are stored in the annotation entity, and we're going to look at that structure shortly. So if we dive into web pages, you see that associated to web pages, you have web page localized content. This particular entity is of the same type as a web page, but you see that on the Dataverse form, Microsoft show and hides fields depending on relationship and lookups that are set on this record level. And again, I'll step through each individual type shortly here. You can have as many localized content. You have as many as the number of languages that you have set up on your website. Again, if it's only English, then you only have one localized content. If you have multiple languages, you have multiple localized content. Um, Page template. This is kind of a meaningless entity for Power Apps portals. I say meaningless because back in the day of ADX Studio, we were allowed to create page templates based on ASPX files. Right now, we don't have access to the source code of portals, so we can't really create those types of customizations anymore. So every time you create a page template, it'll be of type web template. Again, I'm speaking terminology here for folks who knows Portal, but we'll step into each detail here, and we'll make sure everybody understands. Entity forms is how we expose Dataverse forms onto portals. Entity views is how we expose Dynamics views. I should call it entity list, so I need to update this documentation. But Dynamics views or CDS views or Dataverse views onto a portals. Now, extrapolating the page template, as I mentioned just a few seconds ago, you can have two types of templates. One is a rewrite, which is based on ASP.NET, ASPX pages, but we can't really do this anymore. And then the other type is web templates. That's what we're gonna be looking at in this study. Again, going deep into web templates are essentially a combination of HTML content, JavaScript content, and liquid content. This is essentially how we can do low-level, code-based level customizations in portals. All right. HTML and JavaScript, of course, is client-based customization, customization that's happening in the browser as we render a page, whereas Liquid is a script language that executes in the server side, so in the backend. I know a lot to digest here. We'll try our best to explain each detail, and then as we dive into portals more, a lot of these entities and concepts will become more clear. All right. Alrighty. So let me go back to the Power Apps to the maker site. Now I'm gonna get into the portal management, and like I said, this is a model-driven app that exposes the entities that we just saw in the PowerPoint. We talked about websites, page templates, site settings, and I made a point to say that there are more entities than what I had in my PowerPoint, but we're going to focus on the ones that I believe it's important for now. So on my website, I created a page called Simple Lesson 2 or Lesson 2, something like that. I can go to the web pages node here or menu option, and I can look for it. Lesson 2. I can click to open my page, and you see here that I have a bunch of fields plus this grid that indicates the localized content. All right, if I click on localized content, I will see the HTML that I put in place for my page. All right. For those lovers of HTML, you can click to see the details here. All right. So again, websites, web pages, and we are looking at localized content. All right. In localized content, there are other fields. I can set up some page options if I want to enable ratings, and then if ratings are enabled on that page template, it would show up. I can click advanced, and if I wanted to do custom JavaScript, I can throw custom JavaScript here, or even custom CSS. All right. I do use the custom CSS field at the page level a lot of times, especially when I do not have a way to perform some of the HTML customizations that I would want to. I'll give you folks an example. I have this one site that I'm developing, and in this particular example, the customer wants to create a backend area so that his employees, or his end customers, can manage details about patients. Okay, and in this scenario, the customer made a point to say that he does not like the menu bar to be in place for the backend page. Okay, let me show you what I mean. Sometimes visual is better than a bunch of words. So the site up. So here's the example. Here's the site, here's the backend. It's supposed to be like a control panel thing, and he wants to remove this header area, right? But if I wanted to do that through configuration, the moment that I remove this element, I'm also removing all of the JavaScript that portals depend on, all the stuff that, the pop-ups, all that stuff. So instead of removing it completely from the page, what I can do is I can hide through CSS. So I could click to inspect, determine what is the container that surrounds this particular menu bar. So this guy here, and then I can go back to my page. Let's say that this is the page that I'm playing with, and I can do something like this. And I can do visibility equals hidden. So now my menu would go away, but all of the JavaScript references, JavaScript reference to jQuery and CSS references to Bootstrap, they would not be broken because I'm just hiding the menu. I'm not removing it to the DOM from the HTML itself. So this would be an area that I would make use of this field, this custom CSS. Another example would be, for this page, users don't want the menu bar to be horizontal. They want to move it to vertical. So you'd be able to look at an example online on how to do that using CSS, and then you throw the CSS only in this field, so that the CSS is only applicable to the context of this page. So far, so good? All right. So that's the web page scenario. Now, if I go back to the main page record for this setup, I can click here. We'll see that there are other fields on my setup. There is the page template field, and according with our PowerPoint, you have a web page. A web page has a lookup field to page template. The page template has a lookup field to the web template. So let's dive into it and see what it looks like. So here's a page template. You see here the type field. I can click to display. There is a rewrite type in a web template. This web template means that if I click on here, it would show the content of my template. All right. HTML content, and the curly brackets here means that I am using liquid, and all that liquid is doing is displaying the content of the page copy field associated with whichever page uses this template. All right, so I'll step back and then we'll dive in once again. So here's my page. All right, if I look at localized content, we see that there is a field here called copy. All right, and if I step into the page template, then I click on web template, the instruction here is saying whichever page is using this template, go ahead and look at the page field and surface that on the web page when you access it. So again, going to lesson 2, that's the content of my field. So technically, by going to the web template, if I know a little bit about Bootstrap or HTML, I can do things like col large 12. This is another sample. Maybe I do a well here. All right. And if I go back to my site, now I have to refresh the cache. And again, I know I'm probably going too deep, but I just want to make a point to show you where things live in portals. Come on. All right, so let me refresh the cache. And refresh the page. And not save it. All right, so that's my content there that I added straight from a template. Now, this is gonna be dynamic based on whichever page I'm playing with, and this would become static. All right, it would appear regardless of the content of the page, this would always appear at the bottom. All right, just proving, showcasing the data structure here. Again, at the top level, you have a website. Then you look at pages. Pages are associated with page templates, and page templates will most likely be associated with a web template. All right. So I want to do an advanced find, and I want to show a page template that does not use web template in the backend. So type, sorry, template of type rewrite. All right, so let's click on this full page one. And you see here that on this example, it's pointing to a file, ASPX file. Now, we have no way of uploading files to portals, but portals has, as we could see, 4 templates that use this strategy. And if for whatever reason you are troubleshooting portals and you end up in this particular setup, the only way to really see what's going on behind the scenes would be to look at the code base for portals. Of course, later on, as we dive deeper, we can look at where we can find some of the older versions of portals that would give you some clues as to why things are failing or not displaying correctly. But this is what's going on. If you ever, end up in this form and you are facing this particular setup, we just don't have access to the backend to see what's actually taking place, but we can look at previous version of portals where the code base was available and kind of guess what's going on. All right. Any questions so far? All right. So this is essentially the backend. Other entities that we have here that are as important. You have site settings. And in site settings, you have a bunch of configuration. If you have multiple portals installed, you'd see a lot of repetition here, varying by portal install. But it is here that you decide whether or not, for example, you want to enable Azure AD. If you do not want local authentication, you can come in here and disable local authentication. All right. And there are lots of other settings that you may play with or may not, depending on your project. There is one guy, I think he's from the Netherlands. I forgot his name. That he has a GitHub um, repo on all of the site settings. There are some site settings that Portal uses, but it's not shipped with the regular install. So it's really cool to have a reference to the possibilities, because then you may end up with a scenario where the site setting is not created out of the box, but if you create manually, it will do what you want. And a classic example to it is if I sign out and click to sign in, you see here that I have two options for signing in. I have local authentication and the external sign-in. A common use case is that customer wants to disable local sign-in, and of course, the only thing that would be left out is Azure AD or maybe Azure B2C, right? It'll be pretty bad user experience for the user to click sign in and then have to click Azure AD to execute the sign in, right? So there is a site setting that allows for us to bypass that particular setup. And the site setting is this one here. I'll throw it up here. Authentication, registration, login button, authentication type. So when you create that site setting and then you point to, if you're using Azure AD, you point to the particular endpoint that will handle Azure AD, something similar to this. Then automatically, when the user clicks sign in, automatically it will bypass this page and push you over to either Azure AD or Azure B2C, depending on what technology you want to use. Okay, so again, hidden site setting, but it works if you create and use. I think the other one is grid size, page size on a grid, how many records you want to return when you get data from Dynamics. So a lot of this stuff is not 100% documented on blogs or the Microsoft documentation. But again, I'll throw it on the email, the name of the guy. His first name is Alexander, I think, but I'm really bad with last names, so I apologize. But he does a great job on putting the majority of the existing site settings together, even the ones that are not shipped out of the box. All right, so let's go back to architecture here. I think we looked at enough information for the day, but what I would advise you to do is get into the portal management look at specific entities, and if you have questions about any of these entities, you can throw it on the chat, and we can try to respond to that before our next class. So we are about 3 minutes away from the end. I will pause the presentation and open the mic for questions. You can unmute yourself if you want and ask questions if you have questions.
Hey Victor, do you find that
Go ahead.
am I echoing?
Maybe on my mic. Let me mute myself. Go ahead.
Okay, do you find that on the Maker it's hard to use? Like it's hard to drag and drop things in certain areas you can't access. Like I was trying to add a header image in the header in the Maker, and it's not allowing me to. Like certain things are kind of difficult to use.
I do.
Okay.
Yeah, I find that the UI is not really solid. What I like about Maker, the specific areas that I use Maker for, is CSS editing or uploading a new CSS file. If I have to do that through the backend, I have to delete the CSS file and re-upload and then refresh the cache and do all that. Maker really helps that way. Another area of Maker that I like is how it handles entity forms and entity lists. So the previous experience of portals or the front face editor, as we know, it allows for us to add a entity form to a page, but it uses a lookup field to do that. Let me show you what I mean. So I'm on the page that I created. If I want to add an entity form here, I can click Edit and select my entity form from this list. I can only do one per page. All right. If I do it from the Maker experience, the moment that I click to add an entity form, what it does is instead of saving the entity form to that lookup field, it adds the entity form to the content of the page using Liquid. So it would be something like this. I may be wrong with the syntax, but I think it's something like include entity form, and then I have to give the name of the entity form, blah blah blah. All right. So with this particular setup, I can add as many entity forms as I want to my page, right? Instead of having one per page, which is the experience that I am allowing my customer to have here. I have a bunch of forms in the same page. They all load at the same time, so the load time is not too bad, and it still provides a good experience. Okay.
Cool.
But this is done using that strategy of the liquid adding the entity form instead of using the lookup. All right.
Cool.
So that's what I like about Maker. The design, I don't know. I'm with you there. I find it hard. Sometimes it lands on the right place, and then you click out to save. It doesn't save, and then you move on to something else. And then when it refreshes, what you did first goes away. They're doing a lot to make it better. One of the suggestions I made was to drop autosave altogether. I don't know if that's gonna happen, but I think the autosave is one of the factors that make this experience really bad. But we'll see. We'll see what they do. Also, creating a new page is easy here, and navigating between pages is just as easy. So I like that about Maker, right? You don't have this navigation when you're using the front-facing editor. Okay, so in a given day, if I'm doing portals development, I use pretty much all three. I use Maker, then I use front face editing, then I use the back end interchangeably. But we'll go slow. We'll go Maker first, prove the concept, and then as we master each area, we users can decide what they like best.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. Let's see. We have a bunch of questions here. Uh, I find Portal Maker hard. Oh, that's you. I have a question about importing data from Dynamics on premise. Can we use Ajax to connect to all data in Dynamics on premise and execute a flow to get data, sharing them in a custom table using HTML without saving data in data verge? Uh, yes, you could. The problem with that is so Portal. I made a change earlier here in the back end, and I made a point to say I have to clear the cache so that change surfaces here. So Portal leverages this caching mechanism to make sure that performance is still good when you're going through it. So yes, you can do something like that. Hatem, I think it's your name, but you got to be careful with performance, right? Because the problem is if you are loading your old data endpoint every time you load a page, then at some point it's going to become a very slow user experience. Tiago, could we add attachment or signature features in a portal form, integrate DocuSign? You can if the API, if the technology you're trying to use supports JavaScript. I did an example, I think it was in the New York event we did a couple years ago, using surfacing PDFs from Dynamics using a JavaScript library. So whatever you can do with JavaScript, if your customer supports it, or not customer, sorry, if the product supports it, say DocuSign has a JavaScript API, you can do it. So, and again, we'll dig deep when we get to that stage, but it can be done if there is a JavaScript API for the technology. If you want to show data in the portal, but you don't want to save that data in data verge, you can use virtual entities. Very good catch there. Yeah. Forgot to mention, I want also to do actions on them, like example, close a case. I want to send information through Flow or Ajax. You would, up until Web API, Portal's Web API was available, a lot of people use plugins for that purpose. So you'd save data somewhere, and that would invoke a plugin or workflow that then would perform the action that you want. Right now, you can use Portal's Web API to call things or to save the records directly per se, and that would invoke the action. So you don't need a workflow technically to do that. There are discussions around whether or not Portal's Web API should allow actions to be invoked. I can't remember what was the answer there. Maybe something I should test. Maybe it's already available, but there were discussions around invoking actions directly. Problem, I think, was bound versus unbound actions through portals. So we'll see. I think I'll take that comment or question back and give a better answer next time we meet. Does anybody else has have a question? All right, I guess not. Or maybe I spoke too soon. Did anybody post a comment? No. All right, let me get the camera back on and stop sharing my screen. All right. Darn it. Wrong button. Okay, folks, thank you for connecting today. I wanted to make sure everybody has access to all the resources we are sharing through email. So if you are not getting our emails, or like Mary pointed out at the beginning of the call, if you are joining two teams and somehow you don't have access to chat, let me know. You can send me an email, victor@powercommunity.com, or send me a note through LinkedIn, whichever is easier for you. Let me know if things are working or not. Some of the folks who are here today, they did not get a chance to sign up to the mailing list when we first had it open. If you want to sign up and get the messages, again, send me an email to victor@powercommunity.com. I'll add you to the list, and we'll be notified when we have new content. Also, I'm throwing a challenge there. I have a bunch of these shirts, and we have some other prizes. I have books here. The books themselves are a little outdated because they still called Common Data Services, but it's done by David Diak, one of the veterans in the MVP community. So I want to throw some of these swag as prizes to you. It could be number of questions, or how you support each other, or even how your portal project is going. So as you learn, if you can put in practice and then showcase, Victor, this is what I did this week using what we learned. Let me know, and I'll send this over to you. We have this one. Maybe you don't want to my superhero thing in the picture. Maybe you're looking for something more like this, something nicer, right? Because who wants to have Victor and their T-shirt? But anyhow, let me know how it's going. I would love to send some prize just to encourage you in your journey and help you grow in knowledge. All right. Again, thank you so much. We'll see you next week. Keep on learning. All right. Take care. Bye
Thanks,
bye.
Victor.
Thanks,
Bye.
Victor. Bye.